So just in case we want to share this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk about pro search and better Twitter, which is like the Svelte thing. And you said that there are some interesting patterns that you were observing. I mean, you know that I'm interested in better search.
Yeah.
And I really like that you started off the conversation with like, hey, if you add extra friction, then people are not going to use it because search is so simple. Right? You type in stuff in this box and you hit enter. And that's something I really worry about as well. So quite candidly, like I only use better Twitter on mobile.
Yeah.
Because on desktop, I have pretty much memorized the Twitter search syntax. So I just type it in directly. But on mobile, it saves you a lot of typing. So I think, yeah, I mean, what did you want to talk about with regards to search?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the thing is, firstly, it's kind of what I spoke about, that you know, how do you build a tool that gives some additional complex features without adding so much friction that people will not use it? Like, how do you get people to use something like that, right? And I mean, secondly, an interesting, I guess, a curious thing that I've encountered is that if I show people like you, for example, who are developers or people who like search for things regularly on the internet, pro search, and like, okay, there's this thing that I built, and this is what it does. People like that with some technical knowledge usually find usefulness in it really quickly. But if I show somebody who's non-technical, even somebody to whom it's eventually useful, they take a long time to see value in this. So for them, it's like, okay, I can build complex searches, but how is this useful? You know, why don't I just use you know, normal search? And so I'm curious about your thoughts as to, you know, how do you kind of communicate value of something like this to somebody? Or is that something that's even worth doing? Or you'd think a tool like that is only useful to somebody who already has such a need?
That's an interesting question. I think inherently you should be optimistic that people don't know what they don't know. In other words, they probably have needs that they aren't aware of, and you need to teach them, right? So you should not constrain yourself to only those people who have an explicit need that I wish I had better search. Obviously, serve those people, but there are people who don't even know that what better search could do for them because they've never seen it, or they had the problem, they don't know how to solve it, and then they try to solve it some other way. So I think you should be optimistic about that. The part that I don't know about is how to get people there, because like it's not like I mean I'm a pretty basic search user. I do have you know, I have spent some time learning how to improve my Google queries, and I have I've stored some lists of examples of how to do that. But I, you know, quite honestly, I haven't used it very much. So I'm pretty lazy. Like the main thing I look for is like, okay, I only want PDFs, or I only want to search like subset of sites. I also do date range searches. Those are pretty useful because I'm very interested in historical facts and figures and research, right? And a lot of our search these days are very currency biased. So I think it sounds like you understand all of that, and I think mostly I think it's just a matter of telling people what they can do with it. And once they figure it out, you know, then you just kind of let them do whatever research that they want. But I think that is the ultimate valuable thing. Yeah, I'll just stop there.
Yeah, interesting. So there's this thing that I've been exploring with pro search. Like I built can I just share my screen and kind of show you a little bit?
I haven't seen it either, so
cool. Can you see?
I see it.
Cool. So there's this thing I've been exploring. So like initially my objective was just to build normal search. So when you land here, the search box is already in focus, you know, kind of similar to how when you land on Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever, the search box is in focus and you can immediately type and press enter and it sends you directly to, what you want to search for. But if you want to do some extra things, open up filters and, it's a bunch of things, you want, I don't know, particular, you want to just search for images or whatever, patents, and you want things published in the last 24 hours, whatever. So you can just start to add these things on top of it, right? Yeah. So I thought, so the first layer is like, there's simple search, what you would do normally if you just landed on a search engine and you just search, right? And second layer is you add these things. So this is like, it's a layer of friction, but it's something that if you find value in what you're trying to do, this is valuable, right? Because you can go in, you change your jurisdiction and whatever, right? But it's friction. And so to kind of solve that, what I was thinking, my thinking is that, what if, as I'm building up these queries, you just say to me that you have standard things that you usually search for. And so your reference kind of has these things that are usually that you can quickly refer to because you've got standard search. You like to search for historical things. So maybe you've memorized this thing of saying, give me from, 6 months ago, or maybe between this year and whatever, the ranges thing, right?
Yes, the range.
So because of that, you could want to possibly save it. So I started to develop this save queries, for example. So this could be your historical search type thing, where now when I come back, I don't need to go through this because I've already built the filters that I typically use for that other thing. So I can just come back here, apply. Everything is applied for me, and maybe I'm just changing the term of what I'm searching this time. And so like, I view this as like the next step where it allows me to still use all of these things, but I don't have to rebuild it all of the time, right? And the reason I'm kind of moving towards this level is to say, I'm trying to get to a point where I'm removing a layer of friction, right? So now when you come back, you don't need to start adding those things. You just apply a previous query and put in a different search term, for example. So this is like for somebody who has standard things that they search for. And then in my thinking, again, there's a third layer after this, which is what I'm currently calling recipes. So recipes are when, so these are complex queries that you build up for yourself. But when you get to a point where, so it's kind of like a social element, when you get to a point where you see that this particular search is one that is really useful to you and could potentially be useful to other people, build it up into a recipe. So this has all of the filters and different parameters built in. So for example, say I typically search for public Google Sheets documents, right? So everything's baked in here, and maybe, I want to search for angel lists, for example. It'll go out and search for Google Sheets documents. Or this one that I use a lot, Twitter, basic Twitter. I find that their search, which is probably something that you know because you build better switch, that their search is not great when you just click on Twitter. So it's just using Google, right? I don't know, I don't know, Svelte, love. It's just using Google, but searching only on Twitter. And I've personally found that I find things much, much easier if I do it this way than if I go and try to search on Twitter directly. So these are just pre-baked things that now I don't even need to think about applying a saved query or creating the filters myself. I just open this card here and just search using that card. An interesting one like this one, for example, just to kind of illustrate value, I looked at your site, Swix.com, right? You've got Swix.io. You've got a search thing under ideas, right? Where I can find something. So I recently wrote an article about serendipity, right? And I remember that you wrote something about luck some time ago. So I did a little experiment. If I go to your to this search feature that you implemented and search for luck, I can find the article, right? But
Mhm.
when I read the article, there's a place where you talk about Guy Raz, I think, somebody like that, right?
Yeah,
And using
I
your
don't have
thing,
full text search. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
you don't have full text search, right? And
Mhm.
maybe you don't even need it, or it's too much to implement it, right? But with just a few Google queries, I can say search for me on Swix IO for, I don't know, Guy Raz, right? And
Mhm.
it'll probably, as any place where you know, mention that person, which is kind of a version of full text search
Yeah,
on your own site. And if I give you the ability to just embed this on your site or create a Chrome extension or whatever, then you have an easy way to search your site directly without, you know, going through the friction of creating these filters for yourself or rebuilding them every time or whatever, or going to Google Straight
yeah.
and putting it in. So this is kind of my thinking of trying to simplify that process of getting someone from doing normal search to doing complex search, but in a way that's almost as easy as normal search. What do you think of this kind of step process of trying to move from one end to the other?
Oh, I mean, I think the embedded one is really nice to do, but it's kind of different because it's off your site
Mm-hmm.
from this other stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that. As in, like, obviously, I think it's good. I think it's something I've thought of doing as well. I just haven't got to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, and it's good. It's good. I like these recipes. I like these save queries. I think they're good ideas. I think I think it's another question about, you know, how do you get people to pay for this or anything like that. But I think if you can come up with like more and more recipes that people enjoy using, you know, and there's so many Google search tips out there, right? You
Mm-hmm.
could just sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
collect
Yeah.
them
For
as
sure. Mm-hmm.
recipes and make them clickable.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are really helpful as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, looks like you've built something interesting here.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to hear that. I was I was more interested in hearing, like, do you think something like this reduces friction enough to like present an interesting enough value proposition for somebody to come straight to this as opposed to, you know, whatever else, whatever other method?
Yeah, that's the tricky question, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not. I think if friction uses friction enough for like maybe these recipes, but the raw search still isn't really that valuable yet.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I know that I need to configure all those things, right? Basically, like,
Mm-hmm.
I would come here if I had some difficult search to do, and
Mm-hmm.
but normal search I'll still stick to Google because
Stick to Google. Mm-hmm.
it's right there because it's going to be faster. So one thing I was actually suggesting, one thing I was actually thinking about, so if you head back to search,
Yeah.
um, the search tab,
Mm-hmm.
um, what if you could do like 5 of these at once, and you and it gave different modifications automatically. So I type in one search term, but then you
Mm-hmm.
suggested like 4 others, and then you also search them for me. So then you give me a little iframe preview of each of them, so I would know which one to expand into a full window.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make
So
sense?
not entirely, don't quite understand. So for example, you're saying I have a search term here. Say I search for, I don't know, life, and it suggests to me synonyms for life. Is that what you're talking about? Like, or related
Life,
things?
meaning of life, life movie, life quotes, you know,
Okay.
just
Mm-hmm.
like it helps me figure out what else I could be searching.
Okay.
Basically,
Mm-hmm.
kind of merging the
Autocomplete.
Google has some drop down suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I often use as well. Like when I find a new company and I want to know the
Mm-hmm.
competitors, I just type it in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, company name versus, and then Google tells me the competitors.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
if I'm buying something, you know, monitor, best gaming monitor, best,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, monitor for Mac, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But basically, the type once and then get 5 things going at once, I think is a interesting value proposition. which is that, yeah, by yourself, you're not really adding much value, but because you help to fan out these searches, it does start to add up a lot of value.
Okay. Yeah. I get what you're saying. I thought of it as a similar thing. I guess it's a little different. It's not quite the same thing. But I give the ability to to select the search engine you want. And at some point I was implementing a feature to say, what if I want to search all of them at once, to kind of get a comparison, right? Each of them adds their own thing. Google adds some ads for you. In fact, all of them will add ads, but like in different ways, and they will all give you a different result for them. So if, for example, I could issue out that search all thing, and it gives me like 4 iframes or whatever with each of them, and I kind of expand the one that seems most promising.
Yes. I think, I think that is also useful. It's just that typically Google, I've tried the others, and Google is still the best, so I only use Google.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I can second that, because even after building this, I still use Google like 95% of the time. I very rarely expand that drop down. So I don't know how much of a value add,
I think it's a nice to have as well. So maybe the concept of a recipe can be like, okay, do you want to search across search engines, or do you want to search 5 different variations of your search on Google? And then you can save a recipe as like a power user template that kicks off all these things, right? That as long as I can say, for example, right, like right now I'm writing a research. I'm writing a blog post that is actually talking about software stock valuations, and so I'm doing a lot of like, okay, company name, annual report, company name, stock valuation, company name, revenue growth, company name, gross profit or net dollar retention.
Yeah.
All this I could have saved that in a template and then just spammed out like 5 different searches multiplied by 10 different companies that I'm researching. So that becomes a matrix of things that I'm looking for, which is very manual. And I'm collecting all the information manually. And if I knew of a tool that existed that could help me scaffold this out very quickly, I would probably turn to that.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting proposition. I'm interested to know though, like your thinking, and through building better Twitter and using it. What are your thoughts about the amount of value it's added for you, and what you think it can add for someone else? Like, do you think there's a big enough gap for you to like? I know you've already told me that when you're on desktop, you know the terms already that you use a lot.
That's because I built it, right? I memorized it. But other people, they can just come and use my tool, and they actually, I think other people use it more than me. Because they tell me about it and I'm like, oh yeah, I only use it on mobile.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I guess that kind of answers the question I was asking then. But do you see that as something that is valuable, like that, where the gap between just doing it manually and using the tool is big enough to justify the effort, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, that's entirely up to you, right? So for me, I was just tired of like looking up all the syntax, and I was tired of typing the syntax. So I did it only for me, and primarily focus on mobile, because I travel a lot, and I also search Twitter quite a bit. But I think for you, your value proposition can be different. So being able to say like, I'm searching all these things in one click, that's also a very valuable proposition that is desktop first. So maybe you just focus on desktop and make that a very valuable search experience.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, that's cool. And I said on the message I sent you that at some point I was considering also adding Twitter search Twitter search to this as kind of like an additional place that you get. So as one of the search engines there, you just select Twitter. Do you think, because this is kind of right now primarily focused on search engines, and I mean, some of these filters can apply to Twitter search. I just have to filter out things that apply directly to Twitter and maybe add Twitter specific ones. Do you think doing that, because that's kind of focusing on two different things. It's Twitter and search engines, but it's kind of still the same thing in that it's search. Do you think that kind of spreads me too much, or?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know. Do you want to
good
like
answer.
Are you building this for yourself, or are you building this for paying customers? If you are, then try to figure out who the paying customers are and make them happy, whatever way you're solving that search problem. It could involve searching everything that could be searched, or it could be involved just being the best Twitter, just being the best Google layer that you can be, because that's also super valuable. So you could be very broad, or you could be very focused. Up to you.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, I mean, thanks for this. It's interesting to get your perspective, given that you've been working on something similar and that you've kind of given some thought to this search stuff. I'm also curious to know. I saw when I was kind of reading around preparing for this that you also built a Google proxy for Google search.
That is no longer active.
Okay.
I had too many issues with Google. So in order to, Google doesn't like you doing proxying. You can understand, right?
Yeah, understandably, yeah.
Yeah. So what they do is they randomize the API responses.
Okay.
And it's very hard to parse the results.
Oh, all right. That's clever.
So I got very frustrated by the API, and I just gave up.
That's interesting.
So basically right now it only works half the time, and it's not good enough. It has to work every time.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I gave up. If you figured it out, I think that'd be very valuable. Because I don't think it's that hard. I personally wasn't that interested in it. So I gave up after about 4 hours of working on it.
Yeah. And I guess if they randomize their response, they have to have a way on their client that kind of figures out which response did we get this time. I mean, if they're going to be
so okay. What I was doing was scraping the HTML. I wasn't pinging the API. So they randomized the HTML response. And it also varies based on the query that you ask. So for example, if you ask a stock question, they'll give you a separate answer than if you ask for a cooking recipe, right? That makes sense.
Oh, yeah. It makes sense.
But you just got to, you just have to be very clear about what you're looking for. And you shouldn't, when you're developing, you should not refresh too many times. For me, I was firing off a search on every keystroke because I wanted the search to be fast, right? And that's the only way to be really fast, which is to keep firing off, and then by the time you finish typing, your search is already done. So that actually makes it faster than Google. The problem is that Google will rate limit you, and it's not very good. But obviously you have strategies around that, right? You can debounce your typing, or you can throttle your typing, whatever. There's just all these small little nuances to handle, and I was like, I don't know if I want to go against Google.
Yeah. And what about?
I'm sure I'm not the only guy trying to say all right, let's have free search by stealing Google's results, right? So yeah, I mean, even though it was personal use, I don't care about all this. Yes, I'm stealing your results, but you're freaking Google. But it was just too much of a hassle already, even for me. So I gave up. But I think this what you've built here looks impressive. I think you should take a crack at it. because it's so nice when you can display results in line as someone's typing. And then you can just click straight to the result, and you're bypassing Google. So you're using Google's results, but it's kind of bypassing. The only downside is that you'll never be able to make money on it.
Yeah, for sure. So this is kind of the first time I'm building a tool for that I like for other people, right? Usually when I've built tools that are just for me, right? Personal stuff. And so I kind of, it was kind of a resolution for me to say, okay, let me try and build something that not just useful to other people, but that I'll put out there for other people to use, right? And it's been quite it's been quite a learning journey, right? Because and it's been great in teaching me Svelte and SvelteKit, because now if I'm building things for myself, I can take a lot of shortcuts, right? So for example, with the UI, I can take a lot of shortcuts to the UI if I'm building for myself, right? But if I'm building for other people, I need to think about a lot of corner cases that somebody could potentially come across. And so my initial thought was just building a free tool that is potentially useful beyond me, and just putting it out there for free for people to use. But it's only quite recently that I've been thinking, okay, is there any like monetization potential to this? And if so, what are the parts of this that are valuable enough for somebody to say, okay, I'd be willing to pay for that? Which is kind of when I started thinking about, having this journey of saying, okay, if I can give people the ability to create these recipes of things that they search regularly for, and when they come back, they can just go straight to the recipe that they've already pre-built, and trying to make it as simple so that, going to ProSearch is as easy as going to Google. That's when I started thinking about this. And so, I mean, a lot of my thoughts are not refined as to, where this is going, what even this is, but I'm learning along the way, which is why I thought a conversation with you and a lot of other people is valuable, because every time I kind of get this insight that I didn't have before.
I would say it's a good exercise to do. I think you're going to learn a lot from it. Maybe something that I would say, be careful of is trying too hard with this idea.
Okay.
I think it's worth writing something and then putting it out there, and then seeing if it gets any users or not. Usually, if there is some need, you'll be able to feel it and you'll be able to know. If not, you should time box it. Say like maximum 2-3 months on this thing.
Okay.
And then move on to the next idea and basically don't get trapped in this one thing, and then you don't succeed, and then you conclude that is the end of your entrepreneurial journey. It probably takes a while, probably takes a lot of luck, probably takes not that much work to find something that as in like the advice that I hear from a lot of friends is like they have like 100 projects, right? But the one that they started on a weekend is the one that shot off, and then they figured out how to monetize it. So in other words, like I'm trying to encourage you to not try to monetize it right away now, when you could just put it out there and get users, and if you suddenly have more users than you thought.
That's interesting. Cool. That's really great advice. Thank you. I just thought of one more thing that I didn't show you, like this search thing, and I'm actually saying this because you spoke about it. I think like I read a ton of your things before this to kind of see what thinking you've put out there publicly. But one of them was kind of to make this social. So if, for example, this link was something that I figured this particular search is something that's useful, click and get the exact link for that particular search, and I can copy it or use like native share to just push it out there, whatever. So I thought that was, I mean, you can shorten the URL to make it easier for people to share it on a tweet or something. But that's kind of like an additional element I thought is potentially valuable, making it easy for people to push around these links of their complex searches.
Okay. I mean, that's a nice to have for now. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's kind of it from me. So any other thoughts you want to share or whatever?
No, I mean, I like the design. The design, I like the purple and the little touches that you have. Like that is a product sense that that will hopefully, that you're building throughout all your designs and apps, that makes it nice and pleasant to use. So yeah, keep that up.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And I guess one more thing, not to like cramp up your time or anything, but if I wanted like to get some quick feedback on a thing from you, like what's the best way to reach you? Like tweet it.
You can just DM me.
DM
yeah,
you
you can
just email.
Yeah, just DM me.
Oh, cool.
I may not respond right away because sometimes I might be busy, but I usually will try to respond to everybody eventually.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thanks a lot. It's been an interesting talk.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm glad that you're trying stuff out. I'm thankful that you're you coming to me with this stuff, because I do want to see better tools out there. I just I don't know what it actually is, right? The hard part is it's not a smart thing to say, oh, I wish there was better search. The hard part is actually figuring out what it is and then giving it to people. So that's your job.
Yeah. One last thing. I wanted to make, this is unrelated to this.
Sure.
Like I follow your work and whatever. So I wanted to make a book recommendation for you. I don't know if it's something that you've read before, but there's a book by Gary Kasparov called How Life. It's called How Life Imitates Chess by Gary Kasparov. It's a great book. So do you know Gary Kasparov?
Yeah. Very famous.
Chess champion. Yeah. So he's kind of talking about lessons that he learned from chess that are relevant to his political career right now. And there's some elements that I find really interesting. I'd say just as a kind of pitch for the book, you could go straight to chapter 7 called MTQ, and he talks about this whole trying to always seek the balance. So in chess, there's this idea of material time quality, right? Where at every point you're trying to make a trade-off between time, material that you have, and the quality of your pieces or your position on the board. And it talks about how that is applicable, beyond the board.
I would say this is one of the better book pitches that I've heard, because you talked about a specific chapter and you explained it a little bit more. So that's really cool. Yeah, I'll check it out. How Life Imitates Chess. I wish I. It's
not my book. It's Gary Kasparov's thing. But
exactly.
Yeah.
No, this is very nice. It's one of the nicest endings to a call that I've had, which is people giving a book recommendation. I'm not sure if I ever had another call this.
Cool.
People recommended a book. That's very sincere. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Great talking to you.
Reach out to me as you have updates. Curious to see how this proceeds.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too. Cool. Bye-bye.
Bye.